Hey book lovers, Kaylee here and welcome back to the Enchanted Library. I was tagged by the lovely Maegan over at the Mae Cave to do the I Dare You tag, so let's get into this. Question number 1 is, what book has been on your shelf the longest? I had to think about this one pretty long, but I decided on a book that my mom passed down to me, so technically it's been on my shelf since before I was born, and that is Nancy Drew number 35, The Haunted Showboat, obviously by Carolyn Keene. This book has survived 4 sisters, and sadly, all their doodling. Question number 2 is, what is your current read, your next read, and your last read? My current read is an ARC that I received from HarperCollins, and that is The Locksmith's Daughter by Karen Brooks. My last read was The Lonely Hearts Hotel by Heather O'Neill. This one just made me very, very sad. Like, there was maybe a chapter during the reading of this that I was actually happy, but for the rest of it, it was just so disheartening. Lonely Hearts Hotel is an appropriate name for it. And my next read is probably going to be To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo, and I just picked this book up a couple of days ago, and it's a siren fantasy YA retelling of the Little Mermaid situation, so I'm very excited to read this one. Question number 3 is, what book did everyone like but you hated? Hate is a very strong word. There was only one book that I would say hate to, but I talk about that one way too much. So instead, I'm going to go with one that I wasn't really too keen on, and that was The Magicians by Lev Grossman. This book just sort of reminds me of a knockoff of Harry Potter meets The Chronicles of Narnia. And both of those are so much better, and I love them so dearly that this book just kind of upset me. Question number 4 is, what book do you keep telling yourself that you'll read, but you really probably won't get to it? Honestly, it's probably going to be the entire DC Icon series. I am a DC fangirl so much. Like, I have read so many comics, and I want to read these books, and I keep saying that I will, but in all reality, I probably won't, because I am too afraid that they're not going to be true to the characters that they're being written about. I'm hoping beyond hope that each of the authors who are focusing on the individual characters have actually read all the comics and are very, very keen on the source material, because otherwise I just don't think it's going to do them justice, and I'm really scared to read them. I want to read them, but I'm very, very scared to read them, and probably won't get to them because of that. Question number 5 is, what book are you saving for retirement? I do not have a book that I'm saving for retirement. I feel like the person who made this tag was really, really into Lost, because that just reminds me of Desmond and how he was keeping that one book to read for the end of his life, and that's not me. I want to read all the books. I just want to read them all, and then in retirement, if new books come out, I'll read those. But I don't have a book that I am particularly saving for retirement. Question number 6 is, last page. Read it first or save it till the end? Save it till the end. You don't want spoilers, are you kidding me? Question 7, acknowledgements. Waste of ink and paper, or a really interesting read? I'm gonna say interesting read for this one. I always like to see all of the individuals who came together to help make a book happen, and I love that the author has that opportunity to thank them. Question number 8 is, which book character would you switch places with? Oh my god, this one's so hard. There are so many characters that I would want to trade places with. But then I put a lot of thought into it, and I was like, okay, so it can't be a character who's always in mortal danger, it can't be a character who can't take care of themselves, and it can't be a character where people are always out to kill them. Or if they are, anyway, long story short, I had a lot of thought, and there's still a lot of characters that I would be really cool trading places with, but I thought that I would sort of pick something a little bit out of the box, and I chose Claire Bannon from the Bannon and Claire series. This is just the first book in it, The Ironworm Affair, and it's a steampunk novel that's based in like this alternate universe Victorian England, and there's so much interesting stuff that goes on. But Bannon is just, she's so cool. She has magic, she's smart, she can definitely handle herself, and I just think it would be really cool to switch places with her. Also, the fact that I would switch places with her, I'm thinking in my head that I end up getting the magic, and I ended up getting everything that she had, so I feel like this one would be a very cool character to switch places with, because she also has to deal with a lot that's going on in alternate universe Victorian England, and I love that time period, and it's steampunk, so I could just like live my dream. Question number 9 is, do you have a book that reminds you of a specific time in your life? So this could be place, age, anything. I actually have 3 books that really came to mind with this question, and the first one is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. And this one, I guess, spoiler alert, but at the time that I was reading this book, I was really into the song Pretty Baby by Vanessa Carlton, I believe, and I had it on repeat. So while I was reading this book, it was just constantly that song, and the part that sticks out to me the most and that just reminds me of it is when Cedric dies, and I just always, even when I reread it, Pretty Baby just plays in my head. And I don't know, it's just an interesting little thing that happened to me because of that time in my life when I was obsessed with that song and obsessed with Harry Potter, and it just all came together. So anytime I think of Cedric dying, I think of the song Pretty Baby. The next one probably isn't news to anybody, but it is the complete works of William Shakespeare. This book reminds me of the summer between grade 5 and grade 6, and into grade 6, because this followed me everywhere. Like, I always remember I could not go to school without this in my backpack, and that is why it is so ratty. And I have little markings in here to remind me of passages, and those have been in there since grade 6 pretty much. So this book just reminds me of that time in my life. And it was also the year that I moved to a new city and started a new school, and I just felt like this was almost a safety blanket for me, so I had to add this into this question. And the third book is going to be Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkind, and this reminds me of when I first discovered this series and I was reading through them. I had an injury to my wrist and had tendonitis, borderline carpal tunnel, but they couldn't do surgery on it because it wasn't quite bad enough, so I ended up having to do physiotherapy for a year and a half, 3 times a week. And this series, I'm going to say the whole series, was so key for me because my physiotherapist knew that I loved reading, and so what he did was he had me write by hand essays whenever I read certain chapters or finished one of the books. So I had to write essays by hand for each of these books, and it was a tough time, I guess you could say, because I was dealing with an injury and it hurt and all of that, but it just always will make me remember Terry Goodkind and this book series that I absolutely fell in love with, and that helped me out through all of it. Next question is, name a book that you required in an interesting way. One book that I required in an interesting way, because I do have 2 that I ended up thinking of. One is Poison Study by Marie V. Snyder. This is not the first copy that I ever owned. This is actually a signed first edition that I got for Christmas, and it was just this past year that I received it. One thing that my dad's side of the family does is we do Secret Santa, so there was only one person that buys for one person on that side of the family, and when all the presents were done being unwrapped, we were going to go and have dinner and just finish off the evening, and then someone said, hey, there's still a present under there for Kaylee, and I had already gotten my Secret Santa gift. So I opened this up, and when I got to the bubble wrap, I could see the book underneath, and I was shaking, I was red-faced, I was going to cry, because this book is one of my all-time 100% favorite books that I have ever read, and to have a signed first edition copy meant so much to me, and I still don't know who in my family actually got this for me, and nobody is fessing up. It's like almost 6 months later, and nobody is fessing up. So I thought that that was an interesting way that I received this book. The next one is actually an interesting way that my mom had gotten a book, and I'm just gonna say it here. It's These Happy Golden Years by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I read this book once. It is taped at the seam. It is the rattiest book that I own, and I'm so delicate with this book. I try not to take it out a lot, but it is actually a library book from my mom's elementary school. So I thought that that was interesting because technically this book is a library book, and I'm conflicted about it, but I also love that because it's just funny to me after all these years. This book is still in the family, even though my mom just never gave it back to the library. And the way that I know, you probably can't see it, but it has the school stamp right here. It doesn't have the library card or anything at the front. I guess they just stamped them, but I had to add that one in. Next is, have you ever given a book away to a special person for a special reason? I don't think I have. I don't tend to give books away. I'll purchase a book that I enjoyed and I'll buy it for someone as a present, but unless the book unhaul that I'm giving to my cousin counts, then that's really it. Question number 12 is, which book has been with you the most places? I'm going to have some returning ones here. The first one is going to be These Happy Golden Years by Laura Ingalls Wilder, because that has been with me since before I was born. Same with The Haunted Showboat. And then also I'm going to say Anne of Green Gables, because this book has been with me since my hometown, so it's traveled with me a little bit. Question number 13 is there any required reading that you had to read in high school that you hated, but 2 years later you ended up appreciating? I can't think of any. I was one of those people that loved the required reading, and if there was any that I hated, which I don't think there are, but I don't remember them, so I can't really speak to that. But one thing that I will say, I read a book in high school that I was thinking about quite a bit, and I want to reread it, and that's The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. This one is sort of like, it's a dystopian read, and I remember bits and pieces of it, but I don't think I fully appreciated it at the time. I still enjoyed it when I read it in high school, but I really don't recall being able to appreciate it as much as I should have, so I bought this a little while ago to reread, so it's on my TBR, and this is probably the closest that I have to answering that question. Question number 14 is, new or used? New. I like a new book. The only used books that I'll get really are if they're a first edition or something rare that I've always wanted and I haven't been able to find anywhere else, but yeah, new. Question number 15 is, have you ever read a Dan Brown book? This is a weird question. It's very, very specific. I feel like they must have been a Dan Brown fan. And I know Maegan had mentioned that too in her video, and it has to be true, right? It's just so specific. But I read the Da Vinci Code. I mean, I think I also read Angels and Demons, but that was back in high school. This was also in high school, but Angels and Demons I feel like I read as well. But this is the only one that I own. Yeah, I feel like it's a quintessential read. I feel like most people have read at least one Dan Brown book. And I don't understand the rite of passage with that, but it seems to be one. Next is, have you ever seen a movie that you liked more than the book? That is a very, very rare thing indeed. I want to say I've watched 2 movies that I preferred to the book, but I can't think of the second one, but I feel like I had 2. But I'm going to say The Maze Runner by James Dashner, because the book has so much like wasted time, and this book takes place in 2 days, but it just drags and drags and drags. Whereas the movie takes all the parts that were dragging, puts in extra awesome bits, and really amps up the pace. So I feel like Maze Runner, while it's not a major Academy Award winning movie that I'm obsessed with, I do still prefer the movie to the book. Question number 17 is, have you ever read a book that makes you hungry? And they are including cookbooks in that. I don't think I have. Yeah, I don't think I've read a book that actually makes me feel hungry. Even a cookbook. I mean, there are some baking cookbooks that make me sort of hungry, but that's mainly because I've already made the things in them before and I know that they taste good, so it just makes me crave them, but none that really have made me hungry. Sorry if that's a bad answer. Question number 18 is, whose advice do you always take when it comes to book recommendations? No one. I mean, I'll listen to recommendations, but it doesn't mean that I will always take them. Even people who have very similar tastes in books to me, I will still do research on the book, I will still look into it myself before I take the recommendation. Always is way too finite, and I don't think there's anybody that I would always take their advice from. And the last question is there a book that is out of your comfort zone that you read and you ended up loving? So I don't know about loving, but I did end up enjoying it to my surprise. I am not a big romance reader. I mean, I've read some, but I don't say that that's a main genre that I like. I'll still enjoy them, but I don't go gung-ho for it. But the book that I picked for this is from Sherilyn Kenyon, and it's Born of Night. It is the first book in her League series. My friend Jen is obsessed with Sherilyn Kenyon, so she turned me on to this author, and I've read a lot of her Dark Hunter novels. I think the first half of the series as it is right now I've read, but this is a different series that she wrote, and it's more like of a sci-fi space type situation, which I really enjoyed. And I don't remember too much about it, but I do remember it taking me by surprise and that I found myself enjoying the story. And there are more books obviously to the series because this is not a new series, and I want to pick them up, but I keep forgetting about them. But this is the one that I picked for this question. Alright, so now it's time to tag some people, and I'm going to tag the 3 bookshelves, Books in Lala, and Books in Jams. And then obviously if any of you guys want to do this tag, consider yourself tagged. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more videos. I do put new videos out every weekend, plus some bonus videos every now and then, so be sure to hit that bell icon. I'm going to leave the links, as always, in the description down below to all of my social media, and then I'm also going to leave a list of the books that I spoke about down below as well. And until next time, keep reading.